Everyone, to another episode. Okay, so one thing I find about life is that it's all about strategies. Every human being we see, whatever behavior they express, it is fair to say that it goes back to some strategy, some sense of what is real. And the world is implementing a strategy by just the way it's happening. My mind, went towards the sentence abstract expectations from reality. Something that many have said. Seneca said that many people suffer in imagination and in thought rather than in reality. So we are a species that hilariously doesn't have outer realm existential challenges, but we have inner realm experiential challenges. Now, the human consciousness emerges in reality, appears in reality, and so because it's energy, and because it's energy that can move around, it in some sense wonders about what a purpose is. Purpose is in the domain of non-physical living. Anybody who wants life to mean something, anybody who wants life to, in some sense, happen in a certain way, you see, it's about the intention of life force in the moment, from what is it arising from. We don't realize it, but subconsciously we're influenced by what others do, and I have this theory. It took me a while to realize it, but anybody we're around actually see different angles to the moment, and so it's as if this is the hilarious thing, because if my mind expects something that is unrealistic, as some say, then I suffer. But if I expect something realistic, then it's a vision, ambition, everybody's clapping for me, I'm hearing trumpets. You see, the thing is, in actuality, none of us have a concern about how we're being. Being is just being. If the purpose of life was to be, we're already being it. If the purpose of life was to exist, yeah, we're just existing. But if you're wondering about something being more than just existence, then it's a matter of what can move existence. Many people, deny the idea of the soul, but then play along with the notion of a free will that is arising from a consciousness that is mysterious. And what's strange? People may, this is my personal maverick view on religion. For me, prophets of all religions have behaved like time travelers. That's it. They've behaved like time travelers. They've tried to redirect the species. Anybody who does that is like, yo, my time traveler. I don't know, maybe. Maybe, I remember yesterday. Is that considered time travel? Abstract expectations from reality means that how is your mind overlaying itself upon the important simple idea that anybody who does this will suddenly have like a sort of, believe it or not, strange crystal clarity. Okay, you know, I'm someone who, I don't know, since youth I had this view that there was nothing, like nothing special I had to share. Okay, but something indirectly that happened, I realized, is that I didn't have anything special to share, but I feel I had a special attention. I had a special observation, right? That means I could notice some special things. I didn't have something special to say, but I could notice some special things. Something I noticed was that human beings have divided reality into the traditional view of body, mind, soul. When I was born, there was a book on, my father had this bookshelf, and there was this book there called Body, Mind, Spirit. That is the traditional view. They were like, yo, I got a body, and then first it started with body and soul, and then somebody's like, yo, what about a mind? It's a strange sentence, but it could be a strange privilege that our minds have separated from the view of the soul. But pretty much what it is that leads to that clarity I was talking about is just the discrimination between your inner realms and outer realms. When I looked at our species, when I looked at all that's going on, I was like, okay, some weird stuff is happening. If people are unhealthy, they're going to be frustrated. Frustrated people don't make calculated decisions, so people are going to make mistakes. So our civilization is headed in this pattern where people are becoming more emotional, they're becoming more impatient. When you're impatient, it becomes impossible to understand, because you need patience to find new angles to the moment to comprehend it from different views, you know? So the cool thing is, every human being you see around you that has a purpose, has ambition, has a vision, even a career, anything, right? It's as if this is an abstract expectation from reality. We're all acting like sculptors. Just like there's a quote attributed to Michelangelo where he says, I saw the angel in the stone and I set it free. You see human tolerance and intolerance. I would say this is the idea of how comfortable are we with the type of world we're in and with the type of world we want to head towards. If we expect the same comfort from the future as we're expecting now, that's weird. You know? The idea is advancement means consciousness has noticed itself. It has noticed the singular existence. Then through self-awareness, it has become a sort of noticed itself as a conscious. So it's like an existential body and then an experiential mind. And now it's reached a point where it's discovering the relationship between these two. So I can't tell you how many moments I've literally this is what life is. Okay? Either your body is moving first and then your mind is following up with the body, or your mind has moved first and your body is following up with your mind. This is an incredible observation, something that not a lot of people talk about, but I feel it's something that goes on every time. For example, right now that I'm speaking, my mind is moving faster than my body, and my body is just watching. You know, I mean, it is fair to say that I've noticed that when I give these talks based on the imagery I say, my body reacts to it, but its reaction is so subtle that it's like I'm too engaged consciously in the talk to notice it. You know what I found interesting is that whatever we do, you see, the only way abstraction is connecting to reality is because it has the shape of reality, right? For example, somebody sees like a vase at the edge of a table, and then their mind can visualize the table shaking and then the vase falling and breaking. They can see that in their inner realms. But in the outer realms, the vase is still on the table. What does this mean? This means the mind was found noticeable and relevant to the body because it did something with something that the body saw. You know, really the purpose of these Mr. Within talks is to inspire the next generation of advanced communicators, designers, philosophers. You know, a Zen master said, I forget his name, but this Zen master once said, life is like you build a boat, then you sail in the middle of the ocean with this boat, and then the boat sinks, and that's it. And he was saying, when you live as an ego, you are living with this expectation of the future, so till the end of your life, you're going to actually be trying to think ahead. This is why people even think so ahead to consider even the notion of an afterlife. So as a mental entity, because they're living in accordance to their future. You know, it's kind of bizarre, but we can say the era of natural, like the moment the species interacted with, had access to memory and the future. Access. The species is reaching this point where it's like a bunch of these creatures on this rock in the middle of nowhere. They've been dressed up in the uniform of the human idea. Now they're realizing they're not just an idea, and they're asking themselves, yo man, I have freedom of speech, and in order to have freedom of speech, it means I need to have freedom of thought. But in order to have freedom of thought, that means in order to, and what freedom of thought means is like freedom to be, right? So we're reaching a point where even technologies in the future may be directed toward this, where for the first time ever, all the veils are being broken. So what that means is the archetypes of the angelic, the archetypes of the demonic, and then the archetypes of, in some sense, we have, think of it this way, you have the demon, you have the animal, then you have the demi-human, which is like half animal, half human. Then you have the human. Then you have the demigod, which is half human, half god, like think of Hercules and shit. And then you have the god, which is in some sense just like think of Krishna level. And then beyond that, you have in some sense like a point where reality is so true, there is no illusion to do anything. It's strange, you know, the world is like a situation. And we've arrived in this situation, and it's hilarious. We have the opportunity to identify as the victim. We have the opportunity to identify as the savior. And so this abstract expectation from reality is another way of saying that evolution has made an object into a subject to itself, and since it's become a subject to itself, in some sense its expectation is not physical. So abstract expectations from reality is another way of saying that reality seems that it wasn't enough. Consciousness is so bizarre because we don't understand why out of everything the creature can be conscious of, why it's conscious of this. Okay, like this goes into the mysteries and the problems of consciousness, where they're like, yo, why can I move my hand? Why can I move my like certain skeletal structure, my muscles and everything? Nerves in my muscles connected to my brain, but why can't I stop my heart? You know, or why can't I like, you know, change my genetical structure, DNA and all of this? Why is free will only limited to certain things? I have free will to move my muscles, but I don't have the free will to move the cells in my body. They're in an automated zone. So this is remarkable, is it not, that biology has, in some sense, it's as if it has been surviving, and we this whole time we're like, yeah, you know, this creature's been surviving in existence, but it hasn't just been surviving. It's been surviving for something, and it has found what it has been surviving for. What it has been surviving for, what the evolutionary creature achieved, what it became a champion of, was in some sense an awareness to reality. Do you understand what privilege it is to have imagination? That means we're aware of reality, and to such a degree we've taken it for granted that we've wondered about probabilities of it. Just the fact that there's a mind that sees additional dimensions through imagination, or as Mr. Within calls, the inner realms, what is that? That's another way of saying existence wasn't enough. And so if existence wasn't enough, perhaps that explains the mystery of perception, right? In this world of ours, we don't know really the finale, right? It's so weird. It's like we have access to the past. People have memories of their past, but they don't know who they're gonna be in the future. And so it's as if the free will is in the present, but the free will is using the stuff from the past to prepare itself for what's coming in the future. But you know what my view is? My view is that it's multidimensional, And so your human body has a different destiny than your physical body has a different destiny, different destination than your non-physical mind. Okay. Aristotle kind of was very close to the point. He said that the imagination and reality are things that the soul is using. To be honest, I don't know. I realize this world is so grand, right? And it's as if it's like a garden of existence. Every human being, every DNA is like a unique flower in the garden. So we can't tell the flowers how to grow. All we can say is, yo, look up, the sun is right there. And so as every being wonders about the reality, their truth, it's like, you know what it is? It's like our biological eyes saw to a certain point, and then they were like, yo, I need something else to see further. What we can say about consciousness and the intelligence behind the human life force is that it's solving problems. And consciousness is noticing the problem. Do you understand? Consciousness through the human biology is like an advanced problem-solving force. So it's as if you put energy, you put like a mysterious consciousness, let's say, and you put a biological, like, you know, geometrical layout of a body. Like, to be honest, it's so bizarre, but like, even from a spiritual perspective, it's kind of like we've incarnated to be this. You know, in the Mr.Within talks earlier, I would give this analogy, this example, where I would say, imagine, you know, you opened your eyes in the world for the first time, and you were a mechanic in a mechanic shop, and you were holding a wrench. Okay, you had a mechanic uniform and you were holding a wrench, and imagine that was the first time you were awakening to reality. And so it would be in that moment you would just look at what you are. You would see, okay, I'm dressed as a mechanic. Okay, I'm holding a wrench in my hand. Okay, there's a car engine in front of me. Okay, so life is this. Now imagine after like 1,000 lifetimes of the same thing. Right, same, you check what your uniform is, what's in your hand. After a couple lifetimes, the being's like, okay, something seems to be boring, right? Something is boring me about this loop. And so this is the hilarious thing about life, right? That the contrast between the young soul, old soul view in the traditional spiritualist view, it's literally this idea that the young soul still is identifying with shape. It thinks it's a shape. It's not a shape. That's the great secret. So we have fear of life because we associate with a shape, correct? And we're like, this shape is gonna go away or change. But in reality, what has known shape is not a shape. And we can all testify for this, because what has been saying it's my birthday, what has been saying it's my body, my mind, my soul, who's that my? Can we acknowledge that every human life form is actually an unknown, inconceivable first-person owner? Something inconceivable is owning conception, and then it's wondering what it is. It's like the way we're experiencing reality is abstract, but reality is real, and we're like, yo, which one is it? So we've reached a certain point where the context has to change. And why isn't my phone playing music? Guys, can you imagine, like, there's millions of people, like, gathered, and I'm on stage, and in the middle of, like, me speaking, I'm like, hold up, guys, and they're like, why? And I'm like, I'm connecting my phone to my Wi-Fi, hold on. To the Wi-Fi. To be honest, let me tell you, I'm trying to use this episode as a way to kind of like release certain deep thoughts I've had as a soul. And let me tell you what's one deep thought I've had. One deep thought I've had where I was like, yo, I've kind of explored my memories of the past. And then the present is just being present. Oh my God. And so, in my inner realms, I've experienced various versions of the future, which I've written about in my science fiction. And I've come to this point where it's weird. It's as if like I've moved as an object, I've moved as a subject, I've been present as the watcher of both of them moving at the same time. I've experienced the future in the inner realms. You might not believe it, but my fascination for the future, even though I talk about it for the outer realms in 2023, but in my inner realms, I went to it to some point where some parts of it was even too much for me. Do you know, it was too dehumanized, or the human archetype was too comfortable with dehumanized structures that in 2023 we're not comfortable with. Right? So what the future is this cool thing that because new generations of human beings are born, they're being born with the comfort and tolerance. So this thing about human tolerance, and human intolerance is generational. Like, I have a tolerance for video games because I was born in 1991. People born before 1991, there's like, what is this crap? And then children born in the social media generation, social media is going to be like so basic for them. It's going to be their childhood. So when they grow up, they're going to go look for something else. It might be a hilarious strategy that we like literally, overwhelm our youth with our technology, so much everything technological that the child's like, oh my God, I don't like technology anymore. And then the rebellion of the child is towards nature. What we expect from the world, we're actually expecting from our own mind. I'm here talking about advanced civilizations because it's what's real to me. So I guess this talk is that abstract expectations from reality make sense if they are for the future. Abstract expectations from reality from the past don't make sense because the past is past. They don't make sense in the present either. Why? Because the present is not future bound. That means it's so weird. When I'm an emotional being, there is no consideration for the future, believe it or not. We don't know. And perhaps that is our opportunity of freedom. You know, guys, I was thinking about life. I was thinking about like everything I've been doing so far with these Mr. Within talks. Where can we go when there's nowhere to go? And perhaps this is why abstraction came into being. So in this talk, I'm going to make this suggestion that if we become bored with our inner realms in the future, we're going to create a new type of realm. You know, I can imagine driving a Ferrari, but why am I not as satisfied as driving a real one? Do you see? So in the inner realms, everything is possible to us. We just want to see it happen in the outer realms for some reason. So if your happiness is based on a physical outer outcome, or if it's based on an inner outcome, so pretty much it's like there's the observer and the observed. So if your happiness is based on the observed, and then imagine happiness being based on the observed, and then happiness based on the observer. What can I say?
Introducing vocal image. Listen.
But the human being in the inner realms can imagine the future. Just like I can imagine a Ferrari, sitting in a Ferrari, I can imagine walking in a Sky City. So our mind has an ability to live ahead of us. So how far ahead do we want to know our mind? How far ahead does our mind want to go? Imagine your mind was a time machine. And imagine you sat one day in that time machine, and you were like, whether you were meditating or not, and you just sat there for a moment in that time machine, and you were like, wait a minute, I can go as far back into the future, or I can go as far back into the past. And imagine you choose to go as far you can into the future. You go and you go and you go and you go and you go so far, so far, so far into the future. You started off as just like the responsibility of a cell, then the responsibility of a creature, then the responsibility of a planet, then the responsibility of a universal sector. Now imagine you have become the finale of consciousness. You have become the attention and presence of the whole world within your being. And now that you have become the invisible witness of all the visibility that is possible, when you reach, and I don't know how I know this, but when you reach a sort of objective resolution, once you truly see how you're limited as an objective being, and then once been using a sword and a shield, but for some sense has not been winning in battle, just for a second sits down, and for the first time in its life puts the sword and shield down. And the warrior watches, stares at the weapons, stares at the shield, stares at the sword. The weapon's necessity comes based on the situation. The warrior takes out the weapon when there's a fight. But it also depends who you're fighting. You see, 100% it's a game. It's probably something like Hunger Games, but we don't realize it. All these creatures appeared on a rock. Sure, we can accept this bizarre scenario as nature and be like, oh, we read about, astronomy in our, books. But to be honest, the bizarreness of geometry in the void, do you understand how bizarre the idea of God is? It's not bizarre in a bad way, it's bizarre in such a mystical way. Because it means that reality had a designer. That means what you see in the mirror, what you see, the trees, the plants, everything, that means in the middle of nowhere, geometry sprouted. Do you understand? Do you understand the significance? And it wasn't just geometry, it was spheres. And then on these spheres, even weirder stuff. If I choose to look at it from a materialistic point of view, I'm a sort of mutation on the surface of the earth. We all are like a mutation. Light hit a cell and something happened. Light hit a particle with potential and something happened. You know what the issue is? The issue is we find ourselves in a dualistic physical reality of light, darkness, visibility, invisibility, observable, unobservable, oxygen, no oxygen. Do you see what I'm saying? Sleep, awakening. We find ourselves in a dualistic world. But the issue is we have made truth singular. Both the theist and the atheist have made truth singular. The theist has made truth inconceivably singular, and the atheist is trying to find a conceivable singular truth to all of this. But you know what's freaking funny? We are so small in this world that we are the center of the truth. That means consciousness is the secret. It's the secret door that all beings are in some sense. It's the secret revolving door. All beings are kind of like, yo, when am I going to jump out of it? Anyways, thank you for listening. I hope this episode was made you appreciate that it took us so long to evolve just to notice what's wrong with us. And now the educational system has done the job of teaching people the known reality. And after people have looked at the known reality, they're realizing death is a door to an unknown reality, potentially. So the next step is to become content with the unknown. Your teacher is no longer human. Your teacher is no longer language. Your teacher is how the unknown has been encapsulating everything you have ever known. And so once you realize that in order to experience the unknown, one has to be unknown. It's another way of saying your conscious self is not your whole self. And it's not like the tip of the iceberg could stop being tip of the iceberg, but if the tip of the iceberg, instead of looking outside, if it goes within, it will understand its own magnitude underneath the water, and then it doesn't matter what is revealed in the outer realms. Do you understand? There's one view that this being in the outer realms is what I am. There's another view that this is only what has been revealed so far of what I am. Do you understand? It could be that this is an extension. This is like, imagine the person has, like, in some sense 10 levels to themselves, and they're just revealing one level. Do you understand? There's a force here. If somebody says what is more powerful, like, I'll give you an example, right? Imagine the armies of good and evil were fighting. And fractally, the angels and demons were fighting. And imagine this fight was going on. And somebody wondered, yo, how can we stop this? So many strategies were implemented by people on both sides. And they realized they can't stop this war. Until they realize only one thing can stop it: the command of that which has authorized reality. This is the consciousness of modern divinity. And somebody's going to be like, Mr.Within, did you say divinity? And I'll be like, yeah, it depends if you don't like coffee, Think of it this way. The person has 3 types of eyes. The biological eyes are here to show the present. The memory is here to show us the past. Or I'll say it differently. The body's eyes, or I'll forget everything, I'll just reclassify. So imagine there is the biological eyes. The biological eyes are providing sight. So our body provides us with sight that is the present. And this sight is the present. Why? Because our body is existing in the presently. So our biological eyes give us access to present sight, to the present realm, to the present existential realm. When it goes to the past and the future, these are points considered from the present. In the inner realms, they are both part of the ability of your mind's eye. People called it the third eye, and I was like, okay, that's a bit weird. Some people were like, yo man, my third eye activated. I'm like, relax bro, everybody's mind's eye has been active since their childhood. Your mind's eye is pretty much when you close your eyes and see something, that's your mind's sight. Okay, so the past and the future relate to your mind's sight. Do you understand? Your biological eyes are giving you access to the present. If I tell you, remember what you ate yesterday, and an image comes to you, that's in some sense your mind's sight, and you're in that mind's sight, that's an event of the past. Now, something incredible is that what we're experiencing as the relationship, experiential psychology of past, present, future is actually it's all one side of the coin. Plato caught on to it. Time is the moving image of eternity. You know what that means? That means the moment you experience time in the exact opposite dimension of you, the timeless is alive. Do you understand? The temporary is the proof of the timeless. The temporary is the proof of the eternal. We are the proof that there can be the concept of the eternal. Now, think about the implication of truth, right? Imagine this extraterrestrial in the future landed and realized that in a parallel universe of Earth, imagine this extraterrestrial landed on Earth in a parallel universe of Earth, and in that parallel universe of Earth, everybody was cruel to blind people. And this extraterrestrial got angry and in some sense decided for 1 week to make and declare to everybody on the planet, and decided for 1 week to close everybody's eyes. And then everybody was left, let's say for 1 month. For 1 month, the whole human species had to live eyes closed. And then after 1 month, they all opened their eyes, and then people were nicer, people were kinder, people were more grateful of where they are. You see, this is the strange thing. So many people, they say they love life, and I was like, wow, many people are acting loving, and even the human species has made half of itself kind of identify with the idea of love. Right? Love is important, love is necessary, love has various meanings, various times. It's not something one person's opinion can change what it means. Because it means so many things. But the issue with love for a multidimensional creature is that what is it loving? Are you loving your inner realms? Or are you loving your outer realms? For example, I could look at someone and be like, yo, that person's beautiful. They must be an angelic nature. They must come from heaven. They must be an angel or something. but not the case. What we learn from Earth is very simple. Don't judge a book by its cover. It's another way of saying don't judge truth based on reality. This is the power of mysticism. When you understand everything has been on this thin ice, and when the thin ice breaks, all knowledge has been in the presence of the unknown. So if there were two options of cultivating direct experiential knowing of your unknown presence, or cultivating indirect knowledge of your known personality, I would say go for the unknown presence. Why? Because we are going there. Do you understand? Do you know how intense it was, right? For me, there was something that before anybody in the world had challenged me, the mystery of the world had challenged me. Do you understand? The explanations, the answers, the stories that the human species has been telling itself so far, as lovely as they are not enough. And the species has in some sense been identifying with its emotional past rather than the might of its future. You know what might means? People don't know what might means. Oh, might. Those who are mighty, it means it's a great force. So if you look at, for example, one butterfly, you're like, okay, like it's just 1,000 butterflies spiraling around this person who was dancing in a park. You would be like, okay, that's a mighty event of nature. There's something there. Nature knows what man does not. Because man knows unnaturally. It's so bizarre. We call ourselves human, but are we human? What does it mean to be human? Just because we're existing in the shape of a human, does that make us human? You know, people, imagine there was a test and we figured out, like, I don't know, a percentage of the population on the planet, they didn't even like being human. What would we do then? What if we realize we're having a humanization crisis? And what would our expectations? What role would they play? You know, and I realized at the end of it, you know, whether we have friends or foes, whether we like people or not, you know what's bizarre? It's like, it's kind of bizarre. It's like the revelation of the soul, or the realization of the soul, is like everything is temporary except what is experiencing the temporary. So the fear of the body is actually fear of a mind, but because the mind is not a body, its fear does not make sense. So it's a non-physical being that is misidentifying and therefore having a fear that does not belong to it. And this goes to say that we are free before we need to be. This means the world is our ultimate clarity. Thanks for listening. Much blessings and